I used to believe that stability was the same as happiness. That if two people shared a home, shared history, and shared a last name, then whatever silence filled the rooms between them was normal. I held on to that belief the way one holds onto a railing in the dark, out of habit, not certainty. My name is Ethan Cole, and before the warehouse, I thought my life was already decided. Mark and I had been married for 5 years. From the outside, we looked solid, two men who had survived the difficult beginnings, built careers, and settled into a quiet neighborhood where nothing dramatic ever seemed to happen. Inside our house, however, conversations had thinned into logistics. We spoke about groceries, bills, and weekend plans we rarely followed through on. When I asked Mark how his day was, he answered without lifting his eyes from his phone. When he asked me the same, it felt like courtesy rather than curiosity. I told myself this was adulthood. I told myself love matured into something quieter. Still, there were evenings when Mark came home late, smelling of rain or traffic, and passed by me without noticing the effort I had made to stay awake. On those nights, I sat alone on the couch, listening to the hum of appliances, wondering when exactly I had started to feel invisible. Lucas Reed lived 2 houses down from us. I noticed him the way one notices a fixed point on the horizon, present, steady, and unexplained. He owned a warehouse at the edge of the neighborhood, a wide concrete structure with no sign, no windows facing the street, and a reputation for being permanently locked. Lucas himself was polite but reserved. Our interactions rarely went beyond a nod or a brief exchange about the weather. Yet there was something careful about him, as though he measured his words before releasing them into the world. Mark barely acknowledged Lucas. "He's quiet," Mark said once, shrugging. "Probably likes it that way." The comment ended there, filed away with other observations that didn't require further thought. I, however, found myself noticing small details: how Lucas always returned borrowed tools promptly, how he never lingered, how his eyes carried the look of someone used to being alone. The warehouse stood behind a rusted gate, its walls stained by time and dust. I passed it often during my evening walks, drawn to its stillness. It felt separate from the rest of the neighborhood, like a secret no one asked about because no one wanted to be responsible for opening it. I didn't know why I thought about it as much as I did. Maybe because locked places invite imagination. Maybe because I, too, felt closed off from something unnamed. One evening, as I was trimming the hedge in front of our house, Lucas approached me. He moved quietly, and I didn't hear him until he spoke my name. His voice was calm, almost hesitant. "Ethan," he said, "I was wondering if you could help me with something." I straightened, surprised by the directness. "Sure," I replied, though I had no idea what he needed. He explained that he was reorganizing part of the warehouse and could use an extra pair of hands. His words were practical, his tone neutral, but there was a pause afterward, as if he expected me to refuse. I thought of Mark inside the house, likely absorbed in emails. I thought of my evening stretching ahead, empty and predictable. "When?" I asked. "Tomorrow," Lucas said. "If you're free." I told him I was. The answer came too quickly, surprising even me. Lucas nodded, thanked me, and walked away without further explanation. I watched him go, aware of a faint, unfamiliar anticipation settling in my chest. That night, Mark and I ate dinner side by side, barely exchanging words. I mentioned that I had agreed to help Lucas at his warehouse. Mark looked up briefly, then returned his attention to his plate. "Sounds fine," he said. "Don't stay out too late. I've got an early meeting." There was no question, no curiosity. I realized that if I hadn't said anything at all, Mark might never have noticed my absence. The thought lingered long after we went to bed, lying between us like an unspoken truth. The next afternoon arrived with a pale sky and the kind of quiet that made every sound feel amplified. As I walked toward the warehouse, I noticed Mrs. Helen Brooks watering her plants across the street. She paused, watching me with gentle interest. "Helping Lucas today?" she asked. I nodded. "Just for a bit." She smiled, as if she knew something I didn't, and returned to her flowers. Her gaze stayed with me longer than necessary, and I felt an odd sense of being observed, as though the neighborhood itself had taken note of my small decision. The warehouse gate creaked when I pushed it open. The building loomed closer now, its surface rough beneath my fingertips. Lucas was waiting by the door, keys in hand. He looked relieved when he saw me, though he masked it quickly. "Thanks for coming," he said. "Of course," I replied. As he unlocked the door, I felt a hesitation I couldn't explain. It wasn't fear, exactly, but awareness, the sense that stepping inside would mean stepping away from something familiar. I thought of Mark again, of the life we had built, and of how solid it appeared from the outside. I wondered if one afternoon could truly threaten all of that. The door opened with a hollow echo. Dust and cool air spilled out, carrying the faint scent of metal and old wood. Lucas gestured for me to enter, standing aside as if granting permission rather than giving instruction. That I took one last look back at the street, at the ordinary houses and quiet sidewalks, then crossed the threshold. The door closed behind me, and the sound lingered longer than it should have, echoing in my mind. I didn't know it yet, but the moment I stepped inside that warehouse, the careful balance of my life had already begun to shift.
Lucas didn't come to practice for 3 days, and I told myself I didn't notice. But every time I walked into the gym and saw his spot empty, something felt off, like a missing note in a familiar song. On the 4th evening, I found myself standing outside his dorm without fully remembering how I got there. I had texted him earlier, "Coach said you can start light drills tomorrow. Just checking in." He replied almost instantly, "I'm around if you want to come up." I did. His room was small and undecorated, like he hadn't fully decided to stay yet. A desk, a bed, a half-packed suitcase in the corner. He sat on the edge of the mattress, ankle-wrapped, looking slightly embarrassed again. "You didn't have to come," he said. "I wanted to," I replied, and realized I meant it. We talked for hours. Not about basketball, not about injuries, about everything else. Where he grew up. Why he transferred. The relationship he never named but clearly hadn't healed from. He spoke carefully, as if choosing which truths were safe to share. In return, I told him about Ryan. About how long we'd been together. About how nothing was wrong, but nothing felt new either. Saying it out loud made it sound worse than it had in my head. Lucas listened without interrupting, without judging. When I finished, he said, "That's not nothing. That's loneliness." The word hit harder than I expected. After that, we started talking every day. Sometimes in person, sometimes late at night through messages that stretched longer than they should have. We didn't flirt. We didn't touch. But there was an intimacy in the way he remembered small things, my favorite coffee, my fear of disappointing people, the way I overthought silence. Ryan noticed the change before I did. "You've been distracted lately," he said one night while we were cooking. "You're here, but not really." "I'm just tired," I replied automatically. He looked at me for a long moment. "You've been tired for weeks." I didn't know how to answer that. I stopped telling Ryan about my days. Not intentionally. It just felt easier to tell Lucas first. When something funny happened at practice, I texted Lucas. When I felt stressed, I went to Lucas's room. When I felt confused, Lucas listened, and that was the problem. One evening, Lucas and I sat on the campus steps, the sky darkening above us. He had started walking normally again, but he still avoided practice, saying he wasn't ready. "Do you ever feel like you're living someone else's life?" he asked. "All the time," I said. He smiled softly. "Yeah. Me too." There was a silence between us, not awkward, not empty. Heavy. Meaningful. The kind of silence that feels like a question. "Ethan," he said quietly, "can I ask you something honest?" I nodded. "Are you happy with him?" The word "him" didn't need clarification. I opened my mouth to say yes. Loyalty demanded it. History supported it. But the answer didn't come out. "I don't know," I finally admitted. Lucas exhaled slowly, like he'd been holding his breath. "That's what scares me." "What?" "That I met you at the wrong time." The air felt suddenly thick. I was aware of how close he was, how easily I could reach out and close the distance between us. My heart was racing, not with desire, but with recognition. The kind that feels like standing on the edge of something irreversible. I don't want to be the reason you hurt someone, Lucas said. Or yourself. You're not, I said quickly. This is on me. But even as I said it, I knew the truth was more complicated. I wasn't cheating in any obvious way. There were no secrets that could be screenshot, no moments I could point to and say, that's where I crossed the line, but I was no longer emotionally present where I was supposed to be. That night, I went home to Ryan and lay beside him in bed. He wrapped his arm around me, familiar and warm, and for the first time, it felt like someone else's comfort that I stared at the ceiling, my phone glowing faintly on the nightstand with a message from Lucas I hadn't replied to yet. Sometimes I think we understand each other too well that I didn't know how to respond. All I knew was that I was standing in the middle of two lives, one built on promises, the other on possibility, and I was slowly, quietly stepping away from the one I had chosen first. The confrontation didn't happen the way I imagined it would. There was no shouting, no dramatic accusations, no moment where everything shattered at once. It happened quietly, on a Tuesday evening, in the same kitchen where Ryan and I had shared hundreds of ordinary conversations that he was washing dishes. I was pretending to scroll through my phone. Ethan, Ryan said, without turning around, are you still in love with me? The question landed so gently it felt cruel that I looked up, caught off guard. Of course I am. He turned then, his expression calm but tired. That wasn't an answer. Silence filled the space between us. The hum of the refrigerator felt suddenly loud, intrusive. There's someone else, he said, not accusing, just stating a fact. Isn't there? My instinct was to deny it. To protect what was left of us with half-truths and careful omissions. But I was exhausted. Tired of managing two versions of myself. Tired of pretending that emotional absence didn't count as betrayal. Not like that, I said. I haven't done anything. Ryan studied me for a long moment. You didn't touch him, but you left me. The accuracy of it took my breath away. I didn't mean to, I said. It just happened. I didn't plan it. He nodded slowly. I know. That's almost worse. I tried to explain. About Lucas. About the injury, the conversations, the way I felt understood in a way I hadn't felt in months. Each word felt inadequate, like I was translating something too complicated into a language that didn't exist yet. Ryan listened without interrupting. When I finished, he leaned back against the counter. So what are you saying? He asked. That you want to be with him? I don't know what I want, I admitted. I just know I've been lying to both of you. And to myself. Ryan's eyes softened, and that somehow hurt more than anger would have. I wish you had told me you were lonely, he said. I would have tried harder. We could have tried. I know, I replied. That's what I can't forgive myself for. We didn't break up that night. Not officially. We just stopped pretending that things were okay. There's a difference, I learned, between being together and choosing each other. The next day, I met Lucas on the track behind campus. He was jogging slowly, testing his ankle. When he saw me, he stopped. You look like you didn't sleep, he said. I didn't, I replied. We need to talk. His expression shifted immediately, serious. We sat on the bleachers, the wind cool against our faces. I told Ryan, I said. Lucas went quiet. About me? About everything. He swallowed. And he was right. I've been emotionally absent. I crossed a line even if I didn't see it at first. Lucas nodded slowly. I never wanted to be the reason someone got hurt. You weren't, I said. I made my own choices. There was a pause, heavy with things neither of us said. Does that mean we can't talk anymore? Lucas asked. The question wasn't desperate. It was careful. Respectful. I think we need space, I replied. At least for now. I need to figure out who I am when I'm not leaning on someone else to feel okay. Lucas smiled faintly. That's probably the healthiest thing anyone said to me in a long time. We stood up, unsure whether to hug, shake hands, or say goodbye like strangers. In the end, we did none of it. We just walked in opposite directions. Ryan and I ended things a week later. Not because of Lucas, not entirely. But because we both realized that staying together out of history wasn't the same as choosing a future. There was no dramatic ending. No new relationship. No instant clarity, just space. Time passed. Practice resumed. Lucas came back to the team. We were friendly, respectful, distant in the way people are when they know what could have been. Sometimes I wondered what would have happened if I had met him first. Other times, I wondered if I had ever truly been ready for anyone. What I learned was simple and uncomfortable. Infidelity doesn't always begin with touch. Sometimes it begins with silence, with listening too closely to someone new, while slowly forgetting to listen to the person who already loves you. And the hardest truth of all wasn't that I lost either of them. It was that I finally understood myself too late to save what I had.